out as I come. Busting in your line, cracking helmets in. I bring the pain, so what you gon' do? Stand there and just get shook out ya. So clean out your locker, I'm out to get ya. Cause I just popped ya. You can't take the pressure. You might as well quit cause you just can't last. Madden 2000, put your face in the grass. And your pride in the dirt, so put on a skirt. If you come on the field and don't wanna get hurt, just bruise and beaten, all black and blue. And it's been like that since Madden 92. You better come harder than hard, rougher than rough. Put up your guard, get ready to crush. It's things on this field that you just can't.
What is going on, guys? This is the Week 5 podcast for the Chase to the Great White Buffalo, and it was a big week in terms of upsets, predictions, and all other sorts of crazy things. Let's start off with the elephant in the room. There are no more undefeated teams left in the league. Pocket Rocket goes down. The defending champ takes him down. Let's all take a second to breathe. Respect what happened on that field. Let the moment breathe a little bit, guys. Just let that moment breathe. Just take it in for a second.
We're not worthy! We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
He may be running away with the points lead, but he's not going to be undefeated when he does it. And in other news, I was 5-0. All the predictions were right this week. I don't want to pat myself on the back, but that was pretty impressive. So that definitely boosts my record up. 5-0 in the week. Just want to reiterate that one more time. And with that being said, let's take a quick look back at last week's action. Just a brief recap of what happened. The Hitmen narrowly beat Turned Down for What, thanks to a Calvin Johnson fumble, which was later said to be, a mistake. The ball getting hit out of the end zone was actually a penalty. It wasn't called. And the Hitmen get away with one on that one. And by one of the narrowest margins you'll ever see. 138.89 to 139.01. Point 12 is what decided that game. And while we're on the subject of close games, we had another game that could have been decided by that game. I believe that it was decided by that game. I think the Seahawks would have kicked the field goal. But it's the Sandusky's holding on by 0.35 to beat Always Late to Cromartie and improving to 3-1 while Always Late to Cromartie falls to 1-3. That could be a game changer right there. Being 2-2 at that spot is a lot better than 1-3. We have Donde Esta La Biblioteca. They improved to 2-2, knocking Publix down to 2-2, bringing everybody back close to each other. About that action, beats PY Can't Handle Me. PY's just been having a tough go of it this season. He's 0-4. He was thought to be a lot better. The team coming into the season just hasn't really worked out. Still a lot of talented people on that roster, though. And as I mentioned before, the defending champion Slap and Pickle takes down Pocket Rocket 126 to 102. Antonio Brown did not do what Antonio Brown normally does. Julio Jones did not do what Julio Jones normally does. If it wasn't for Adrian Peterson, this game could have been really ugly. But there you guys have it. That's kind of what happened last week. Slap and Pickle, just right thing, right time. And then the Jeremy Hill, Giovanni Bernard thing worked out for him perfectly. I've never seen someone start two running backs from the same team and they score 15 apiece. But, it's crazy. It worked out. And, it makes things interesting. That being said, I think it's time we get into this week's action, preview these games, and see if we can make heads or tails of what the hell is going on this season. The first matchup we're going to get into this week is Slap and Pickle versus Always Late to Cromartie. Always Late to Cromartie is coming off a bitter loss last week, and they're really looking to avenge it and try to salvage the season at this point, sitting at 1-3. A loss this week could mean that they're not going to make the playoffs. They got Joe Flacco against the Browns, which Flacco's been really hit or miss. DeMarco Murray, who I think he has 40 total yards on the season or something insane like that. Let's see here. Yeah, he has 47 total yards on the season right now. And if I'm not mistaken, a first-round pick was given up for DeMarco Murray too, slap and pickle. Bishop Sankey is in at starter right now, which we will see what happens with Sankey, but Antonio Andrews might be the guy that's took the rock out there this week, who is also ironically owned by Slap and Pickle. Jeremy Mackin starting receiver against that soft Chicago defense, so he could have a good game. Demaryius Thomas is against the Raiders. Delaney Walker is going against the Bills. That could be a nice matchup. The Bills defense is good, but they've been giving some things up. Jordan Matthews versus Saints. If that goes the way people think, it should be a shootout. That could be a good game for Matthews. Steven Hauschka. He tried as he might last week. He could not take the team to victory. One more field goal or one more extra point would have done it. 11 just didn't cut it for him. And the Bills defense versus Tennessee. In terms of what's on the bench, Marshawn Lynch has already been deemed out this week. Oh man, that's crazy. Marshawn Lynch is out. Cutler's questionable. Cutler played last week. Greg Olsen and Bilal Powell on buys. Carlos Williams is out. Jalen Strong was on the bench, but I don't think Jalen Strong has done anything up until this point in the season, and it was a very lucky 53 for 2 touchdowns. I mean, the Hail Mary was ridiculous. I can't believe they let him catch that ball. And then Stafford versus the Cardinals. I don't think you really put Stafford in there against the Cardinals defense. So I think that lineup looks pretty good right now. If you're feeling crazy, you could go against the Packers versus the Rams, but both defenses have a pretty favorable matchup this week. So I think you're staying pat with what you got. Now on to Slap and Pickle, fresh off a huge win last week that really helped save their season and put them at 2-2. Yeah, Carson Palmer versus Detroit. Palmer's been killing it this year. I mean, it's also the fact that Andrew Luck was deemed out for Thursday's game, but Palmer's been doing pretty good. Throwing for over 300. He's thrown a pick every game since week 2, but he hasn't really been putting up terrible numbers. Roughly about 20 points a week, so you'll definitely take that. Arian Foster, in his first full game back, had 9 catches for 77 yards. Puts up a 26.5, which is great going into the week. Carlos Hyde has his other running back position. The man who could be one of the best wide receivers in the league. It'd be nice to see if he had a decent quarterback and not a revolving door of quarterbacks, because the Texans just keep pulling a guy, starting another guy, pulling the other guy, and it's hard to keep up with. But DeAndre Hopkins, he looks like one of the best guys in the league. I think in a couple years, some of the other guys wear down, get a little bit older. DeAndre Hopkins is going to be up there. DeAndre Hopkins I think he's a top 5 talent. And he had 169 for 29.9 on Thursday. So Slap and Pickle jumps out to an early 56.4-0 lead. You got John Brown versus the Lions. Travis Kelce versus Chicago. Kelce could have a monster game this week against that Bears defense. Gio Bernard versus Seattle. I guess it's a toss-up of which guy you think is going to do better out of the Bengals backfield. So, you know, good luck trying to choose which one of those guys is going to be the one to go off. But I'd have to say against Seattle's defense, Gio might be the one to go with because he does more in the passing game. Steven Gostkowski versus Dallas. And the Bengals defense versus Seattle. That Seattle offense has not looked good this season, so I think the Bengals are a very smart play. On the bench, a bunch of injured guys, man. Just bad luck this year, and he's still managing to try to navigate through the minefield that is all these injuries. Just a brief roundup of guys who are injured or inactive going into this week. Big names: Devontae Adams, Sammy Watkins, Andrew Luck, Dez Bryant, and Joique Bell. 4 of them were pretty big contributors last year. One of them had a chance to be a big contributor this year. Oh, and let's not forget, he cut Tony Romo because Romo got hurt. So Injury bug is killing the defending champ right now. Still 2-2 though. This chance Dez comes back early. If he can just navigate and stay near 500 when some of these guys come back, I'm not saying repeat, but I'm not ruling it out. You just got to make it. In terms of what NFL.com is saying, they predict Slap and Pickle to win by a narrow margin, 160 to 147. For this week, I tend to agree. I think Slap and Pickle's people are just positioned for a better week. I think injuries and matchups are going to kind of play a big part, and I think Always Late to Cromartie falls to a staggering 1-4. It's going to be tough to come back from that. And Slap and Pickle moves to 3-2 and continues to fight to defend that title. On to the next one, guys. Our second game of the week puts two 500 teams, both sitting at 2-2, in Bout That Action and Publix Cryo Special against each other. The winner gets slightly better footing in this build up to the playoff push, while the other one's going to be struggling to try to catch back up. In terms of starters, Bout That Action is going with the solid normal lineup of Matt Ryan, Eddie Lacy, Le'Veon Bell, AJ Green, Mike Evans, Martellus Bennett, Rashad Jennings, Ken Azzaro, and the Pats defense against Dallas. Matt Ryan's playing the Redskins, which with the Redskins' secondary issues and Julio Jones at wide receiver, Matt Ryan could always have a solid game. Eddie Lacy's going against the Rams, and surprisingly, Eddie Lacy's been way more effective in the pass game than I've given credit for in the past, but he still gets it done on the ground, and he always does it. He's not a guy that really goes over 100 much, but he's always getting solid points. He's always around like the 15 area, and that's good enough for a start every week, especially in a dynasty league. Le'Veon Bell, workhorse, and the Steelers have to lean on him with Michael Vick there. He's had 30 points both games this season that he's been in there. One of the best players in the league. AJ Green draws a tough matchup against the Seattle defense, but Andy Dalton's been off to such a hot start, and AJ Green is one of the best wide receivers in the league. You can't sit one of your best players. Mike Evans is looking to rebound after a dud of a game last week, and he's playing the type of team to do it against in Jacksonville. He only had 32 yards last week, but, I mean, he still saw 8 passes coming his way. So, it's not like he's not getting targeted. It's just Vincent Jackson was the one killing people last week and not Mike Evans. We'll look to see if they can keep the trend going, just keep switching off. Martellus Bennett is playing the Chiefs. The Chiefs defense is what it was a couple seasons ago, and Martellus Bennett is almost the top option. He might be even if Alshon comes back, if Alshon's not all the way healthy. Rashad Jennings is going against the 49ers defense. That defense is just atrocious. That's pretty much the reasoning behind it. I don't think Rashad's going to be just going to destroy things, but he could easily break off like a long run for a touchdown or a catch, and the 49ers are the type of team to do it. Ken Azzaro had a monster game last week. He got 17 points. Solid kicker. Cardinals been putting things up. The Patriots defense is back. I don't love the Patriots defense, but I love them against Brandon Weeden. So I'll roll the dice with them this week. In terms of the bench, a couple doubtful guys, injured reserve guys. Stevie Johnson's out. Steve Smith is doubtful. Romo's on injured reserve. Jordan Reed's out. Safarian Jenkins is doubtful, but he's probably not playing. Tevin Coleman returned to practice this week, but right now he's just going to be worked into the committee. I don't think he can really come in and just take his job all the way back. It's going to take Devonta Freeman having some bad games or an injury for Tevin Coleman to take back over as the starter. For the most part, I think this lineup is set. I didn't lose anything with Dante Moncrief being on the bench. He only had 1 catch for 3 yards, so not losing a single thing there. In terms of Publix, they got started off on Thursday with Frank Gore, who had a really good game for Frank Gore. 98 and a touchdown, 22 points from your flex. You're going to take that every single week and hope that that helps you get the win. At quarterback, you got Derek Carr against that Denver defense. Denver's defense gets after the quarterback and they create turnovers. That's what they do. So Derek Carr, that might not be the best matchup. At the same time, though, they could be trailing, so Oakland might have to throw the ball a lot. Justin Forsett versus Cleveland. Forsett's coming off his best game of the season, in which he outmatched his complete season total in one game on his 150. You got to roll with Forsett. He was one of the top backs last year, so you got to keep playing him. Cleveland's not a bad matchup. Mark Ingram's going against Philly. I don't know. Mark Ingram gets solid points, but who knows how that game's going to play out. And with the Saints offense, you never know, but he's been a solid guy this season. The least he's got is 17. So Mark Ingram's been surprisingly good the last 2 seasons. Julian Edelman, you know what he's going to do. Probably get like 7 or 8 receptions, 80 to 110 yards, maybe a touchdown or 2. He's just a guy he's a beast. We're going to be fighting each other to see which Tampa Bay receiver gets more love this week. I hope it goes my way. Mike Evans is the future, brah. Vincent Jackson is the past. Throw the ball to Evans. But same thing with Evans. Jacksonville is a sweet, easy matchup on paper. So we'll see if one of those 2 guys can do something. Jimmy Graham versus Cincinnati. Man, Jimmy Graham. A curious case at Jimmy Graham. He had that one good game against Chicago. Basically, if Jimmy Graham doesn't score a touchdown in the Seahawks offense, he's not having a good game. So kind of tough there. At this point, he's still name value, and you think that the Seahawks are eventually going to try to get it together, but there's no guarantees. Brown at kicker. The Ravens defense. Oh gosh, what can we say about the Ravens defense? They've been bad, but not that bad in fantasy. Outside of the game they lost to Oakland, they've scored at least 10 points every game this season. And based on their on-the-field play, I would have thought that was a lot less. Let's see what's on the bench here. David Johnson in Arizona. The running backs in Arizona are only getting more healthy, so he's going to get down to the bench. Thomas Rawls, who's getting the start in place of Marshawn Lynch versus Cincinnati. I think you stay pat with Forsett and Ingram. Looking at the roster, I think everything's pretty much set. I don't see anybody on the bench here that Publix would throw in. You can get crazy maybe with James Jones, but that's about the only guy that I see on there. James Jones. No one else has really played their way into getting time in Bush, Colston, White, and Bo. So yeah, I think that's about it. NFL predictions. They say that About That Action will win 183 to 142. It's going to be close. I'm going to have to go with Publix this week. I think their guys do just a little bit better on the field, obviously. I think that AJ Green versus Seattle matchup kind of hurts a little bit. AJ Green's been instrumental in me getting some victories the last couple weeks. I say Publix gets the win. NFL.com is wrong. And we will go into Game 3. Matchup number 3 puts Turn Down for What coming off a bitter .12 defeat last week versus the Sandusky's, who are sitting at 3-1, trying to move up to 4-1 and solidifying their reach right now in the playoffs. In terms of the rosters, the Sandusky's has Tom Brady coming back against Dallas in the Tom Brady Hates Everybody campaign, and I think he's just going to throw all over that Dallas defense yet again. Jamal Charles versus Chicago. Jamal Charles is a beast. Chicago's defense sucks. Easy enough. Theo Riddick versus Arizona. That's an interesting play. The Lions' offense has been kind of getting beat up. The Lions' defense isn't really doing anything. They're being forced to throw the ball. The Lions are 0-4 now. Their season's pretty much over at this point. Theo has been getting a lot of looks, and I think that his 20 receptions is second among backs. And that's crazy if you think about it, because Theo Riddick was a guy that wasn't even getting talked about coming into the year, and he has got 20 catches on the Lions. That's insane. There's really good receivers in the league right now that don't have 20 receptions. So this goes to show you what that Lions offense has turned into. They used to be a team that just stretched it deep, threw it to Calvin Johnson. Now they're getting pressured, and Matt Stafford's trying to throw passes out of the backfield and do some little things. It's almost Brandon Weeden-like. It's just Stafford's a little bit better. Randall Cobb. He's a beast. He didn't have that great of a game last week. He might change that against St. Louis. The guy's pretty tough to cover. Not many corners can just shut him down. He's a really talented receiver. I like him a lot. And Aaron Rodgers likes him a lot too. And they're the type of guys, like, I feel like Aaron Rodgers is the type of guy that if he's tight with some guys, and I think he's one of the most well-liked players in the NFL, just based on what people say and interviews and all that stuff. I think if him and Randall Cobb want to throw 3 touchdown passes, they're going to do it. Like, if Aaron wants to get him to get 3, he's going to get 3. That's just what these guys do. They're that talented. Terrence Williams versus New England. Terrence Williams is technically the number 1 in Dallas right now, but I don't think he's a guy that has number 1 receiver talent. Maybe if Tony Romo was there, he'd be having some better games, but with Brandon Weeden there, it's just not an effective method. And he's against New England, who they're probably going to feast on Brandon Weeden. Larry Donnell versus San Francisco. That San Francisco defense is trash. Larry Donnell is a pretty talented guy in terms of matchups. I know the concern coming into the season was that he wasn't that good of a blocker, so they thought he might be a liability on the field. He's not killing people like he did last season, but he's still a solid tight end. Travis Benjamin versus Baltimore. That Baltimore defense, I've said this a lot about a lot of defenses so far in this podcast. That defense isn't that good. And I don't know, Benjamin might be for real, guys. Last week was his first week without a touchdown, but he had 79 yards receiving. So we could be wrong. He could have been a guy that people missed on. He could be the guy that slipped through the cracks, and Travis Benjamin could be a really good ad. We'll see how the season keeps going for him. We have Santos, who had a really nice game last week. I think he scored more than a lot of people. Oh, when I say think he scored more than a lot of people, he did. He scored 27. He scored more than a lot of skill position players and a lot of quarterbacks. That's an insane game. That will probably never happen again, but geez, you can't ignore that. That was a crazy game. And then the Broncos D, who knows how to rush against a young quarterback and a young offensive core. That could be a really good matchup for the Broncos defense. In terms of the bench, if you want to get crazy, Michael Crabtree has been putting up a couple decent games left and right. Tyrod Taylor has been a guy that's been able to put a couple good ones up, but I mean not against Tom Brady. Unfortunately, he set Andre Johnson this week, 77 and 2 touchdowns. After what Andre Johnson had been doing, you can't fault him for that. Andre had done nothing the last 2 weeks, so that's just kind of one of those like crappy, like damn it kind of moments. Could always throw RG3 into the starting lineup. You never know when he's going to take over for old Kirk Cousins. Gosh, that's man, that sucks. That's my favorite team. Jesus, that one hurt myself. In terms of turn down for what, you got Drew Brees at quarterback. Seems like he's getting more healthy. Drew Brees is a solid guy. If you got him on your roster, you can't really sit him. Although this is one of the weeks where you might, just because Phillip Rivers' matchup is so good. That Pittsburgh defense allowed 300 yards passing to Colin Kaepernick, I'm pretty sure. So if Colin Kaepernick can pass 300, Phillip Rivers can go for like 600. The only problem with Phillip Rivers is most of his receivers are out on injury. Deion Lewis in New England, the guy's been a PPR monster. You got to play Deion Lewis. He's going to get his touches as long as he doesn't fumble a ton, because Belichick will pull him immediately if he does. Ronnie Hillman's a roll of the dice at running back. If he busts a long run, that's good, but that neither Broncos running back has been able to run worth anything. Calvin Johnson versus the Cardinals. Oh, what could have been for Calvin Johnson? He was a few feet from a touchdown, and Sapp was a few feet from a win, but it wasn't meant to be. He ends last week's game with 10.6. Man, Calvin Johnson old. The Lions need to go back to that old style offense and just throw the ball to Calvin every play, because it worked, right? I mean, they went 0-16 one time, and those are results that you can't argue with. But hey, what do you got to lose? You're 0-4 right now, so throw the ball to Megatron. telling you guys. Martavis Bryant comes back. Sapp isn't waiting for this guy. Expecting big things from the dude with the neck piece tattoo. He tweaked his knee in practice this week, and he is unlikely to play against the Chargers. Rough. Another week without Martavis Bryant. Tyler Eifert trying to get right versus the Seahawks. Melvin Gordon against that soft Pittsburgh defense. Robbie Gould going against Kansas City, it depends if the Bears can score. And the Colts got him 10.5 earlier this week. In terms of the bench, Chris Johnson, Percy Harvin, they could be decent plays. Andy Dalton versus Seattle. Andy Dalton's been killing it, but that Seattle defense is probably the best he's faced all season. Alshon Jeffrey is questionable. TJ Yeldon's going against Tampa Bay. Yeldon hadn't been killing it by any stretch of the imagination, but that Tampa Bay defense is not the best. And Yeldon's coming off a 105-yard game on 22 carries. So, I don't know, maybe you throw him in there. Maybe Jacksonville's going to use him as a workhorse. And basically the only real player of note, well, there's two. The Jets and Jarvis Landry are on bye. So I think you would have started the Jets that week if they were here. In terms of NFL projections, they have Sapp narrowly winning this one. I, however, do not. I think the Sandusky's with Tom Brady and Jamal Charles and his guys will find a way to win and send Sapp to 2-3 while they move to 4-1 and they get just a little bit closer to the playoffs. Got 2 more games to look at, guys. Let's break those down next. Fourth matchup, we have the 3-1 Hitmen, who are on a 3-game winning streak, versus Donde Esta La Biblioteca, who won last week to get to 2-2. Let's take a look at who these guys got. Dundee has Aaron Rodgers and Matt Forte, a solid duo at quarterback and running back. I've said that every single week, and that's not going to change. Those guys are legit. Doug Martin versus Jacksonville. That could be a good matchup, and Doug Martin is coming off one of his best games in years. 106 in a TD. Wow. He hasn't done that since, I think, his rookie season. You got Emmanuel Sanders versus the Raiders. You got to start Emmanuel. Larry Fitzgerald versus the Lions. There's no reason to sit Larry. He's been killing it the last couple weeks. I mean, it's just been insane. Larry Fitzgerald is rejuvenated. It looks like the Larry of old. I like it. Larry was one of my favorite players for a long time. I like seeing Larry Fitzgerald kill it. Max Williams, the young tight end, trying to get used to the NFL. Only had 17 yards last week, going against Cleveland this week. We'll see how that works out. Devontae Freeman, who's on a tear. If you sit Devontae Freeman at this point, I don't know what you're doing. You must want to lose. Going against the Redskins, who have a pretty stout run defense. We'll see who wins that battle. But Devontae looks unbeatable right now. He has 95 points in the last 2 weeks. You got Matt Bryant kicking against the Redskins. And the Steelers defense, who just gets gashed and gashed and gashed like they're in a horror movie. But the last 2 weeks, they've gotten at least 15 points. I think that's going to change against the Chargers, but we will see how that works out. In terms of the bench, Antonio Gates is coming back from his suspension versus the Steelers. That's a good matchup. I don't know if you throw Gates in there, but you got to be wondering what's going on with him after coming back from these allegations. Cecil Shorts is inactive. He already played anyways. Julius Thomas is also, I thought, supposed to be back. He's listed as questionable coming back from his injury. He was able to practice on Friday for the 3rd day in a row, but we will see how much they use him in Jacksonville. They could definitely like him out there as a bonus. Roethlisberger is hurt. Marcus Wheaton is probable. Marcus Wheaton is probable. versus San Diego. So if you really wanted to, you could throw them in there as a very late Monday night play. But in terms of the bench, you might make a move at tight end, but I think that's about as good as it's going to get. For the Hitmen, you've got Eli Manning versus a very nice matchup in the San Francisco defense. I can't reiterate it enough. You got some Giants this week. Chances are play them because San Francisco can't stop anything. I wouldn't go as far to say that like the 10 of us could go out there and score points on them, but we might be able to get a first down. And I mean, they're NFL players. So if we got a first down, I mean, that'd be like winning the Super Bowl for me. I would just do Gatorade parties and champagne the whole night. It'd be glorious and awful at the same time, because we'd probably get injuries. I mean, we hurt each other when we play football now, so I can only imagine NFL players crushing us for talking shit about getting a first down. Danny Woodhead versus the Steelers, another nice matchup. Danny Woodhead is very effective in the passing game. CJ Spiller, who is coming off a lucky 31-point game. Before that 80-yard touchdown in overtime, he had a very pedestrian stat line. Allen Hurns, who has been a very good receiver for Jacksonville, going against Tampa Bay. That could be a nice matchup. Tampa Bay's been getting hurt a lot this season, and Allen Hurns has at least 60 yards every single game this season. Amari Cooper, who's probably leading the clubhouse for Offensive Rookie of the Year right now, came back down to earth a little bit last week, but 49 and a touchdown. Still not bad. The lowest total he's had this season is 9.7, so I think you keep rolling with Amari. Derek Carr definitely likes him. Charles Clay's at tight end versus Tennessee. A lot of people are hyped on this matchup. He had 82 and a TD 2 weeks ago against his former team and 111 last week. We'll see if he can keep it going, but the way he's been playing, I don't know if he can sustain it, but still a very solid tight end play. Leonard Hagerson going home against Washington. There's something to be said about these players returning to places they were drafted. Felt like they got wronged. Hagerson listed as probable. I know he's having a thumb issue. I think if he plays, it's not a bad move in the flex. Mason Crosby versus the Rams, and the Giants looking to pick up a lot of Colin Kaepernick points and pick up some points against him. They haven't been a bad defense this season. 9 points is the lowest they've scored. Not a terrible play. In terms of the bench, a lot of people on bye. Chris Ivory, Cam Newton, Jonathan Stewart, Stefan Diggs, the Panthers D. So outside, with all those guys spoken for and Deshaun Jackson out with injury, I think that's pretty much the lineup. I don't think he's got anything else. NFL.com says this one's going to be a landslide. They say Dundee is going to win 170 to 111. I'm going to have to agree with them. I think the injuries and the buys are going to hurt the Hitmen this week. They come back down to earth a little bit, go 3-2. Dundee also goes 3-2, just convoluting the little matchups we have a little bit more, tussling for the playoffs. But hey, I kind of like the sweat. I kind of like everybody being close to each other. So, I'd rather everyone be in it and everyone be like invested than just, everyone being like, man, fuck this, I don't even care anymore. So, something to be said for that. One more matchup this week, guys, and we are getting to it right now. Our last matchup of the week, guys, puts the only team left looking for a win versus the team that's pretty upset that they took their first loss. And PY Can't Handle Me versus Pocket Rocket. PY Can't Handle Me has got Russell Wilson starting at quarterback this week against Cincinnati. Russell's had a pretty decent season thus far. Looks to try to keep it going. A couple low teen scores so far this season. You hope that he has maybe a game similar to what he did in Green Bay where he can get like 23 for you. But not a bad play at quarterback. Latavius Murray, who had kind of a down week last week, but Latavius has been pretty good so far this season. Last week was his lowest total, and he still got him 13, which isn't something to scoff at. Todd Gurley came to life last week, man. The first overall pick in our draft this year. 146 on the ground, got 25.8 in terms of points. You got to roll with Gurley after what he did last week. ODB, got to play ODB. He's got San Francisco. You hope he can have a big game. Allen Robinson, who's number 1 out in Jacksonville versus Tampa. Been a solid guy this season. Besides week 1 against Carolina when the Jaguars really couldn't do anything, he's been decent. At least 10 points, double digits from a guy picked up in a throwaway trade last year. That's not bad. Barnage at tight end versus the Ravens. Decent play. Barnage has come on the last couple weeks. Been a decent guy at the tight end position. 19 last week and 24 the week before. If he keeps getting touchdowns, Barnage could be a good guy. But we've seen this before with Jordan Cameron, so hopefully he doesn't have the same injury bug that Jordan Cameron does. Keenan Allen versus Pittsburgh. Keenan Allen has had 2 monster games, 1 okay game, and a pretty bad game. This defense could be another monster game for him. I would not be surprised to see Keenan Allen go off. Justin Tucker, who's a very solid, very reliable kicker. If you could give more points for game-winning kicks, I'd love to do it. Justin Tucker's a guy that can just knock him down. And the Cardinals defense versus the Lions, which Matt Stafford's an injury-prone type of guy. The Cardinals will take advantage of that. In terms of what was on the bench, Rudolph is on a bye. He's the only guy on a bye week this week. T.Y. Hilton played on Thursday, got 88. So 13 points there on the bench. C.J. Anderson's on the bench. Yeah, in terms of bench guys, I don't see anybody that really makes a case to be in the starting lineup this week. Back over to Pocket Rocket, who is rolling the dice with Garrett Blount at running back versus Dallas. That could be a hit or miss game. You never know what Belichick is going to do with his running backs. Peyton Manning versus Oakland. If there's one thing Peyton Manning does, it's win against the AFC West. And the Raiders are still the Raiders. So Peyton should have a decent game against them, but who knows? He's had 2 awful games and 2 decent games. We'll see what Peyton does. Alfred Morris versus Atlanta. That Redskins backfield is getting more and more cloudy with Chris Thompson emerging as a guy that's contributing. So you don't know there. Julio Jones, must start. One of the best receivers in the league versus Washington. Antonio Brown, as much as he did not look good with Michael Vick, he dropped a touchdown and he dropped a 4th down pass. So Antonio Brown could easily had another good game even with Michael Vick. Rob Gronkowski's a monster. No one's going to stop him. You can't stop him. Versus Dallas, who is at this point just having their will broken with 2 of their best players out. Tavon Austin, who was one of the high-scoring receivers in the league last week in terms of fantasy. We'll see if he can do it again if the Rams finally get some return value on that first-round pick they spent on him. McManus versus the Raiders. If the Broncos score some points, that works out, but that's what happens with kickers. The Broncos have not been getting into the end zone as much as they have in the past, so they're definitely giving him opportunities to kick field goals. And the Rams defense versus Green Bay. We'll see how that works out. I don't like that matchup, but the Rams defense is legit, and they've scored at least 19 3 out of the 4 weeks they've played. So I see why you're rolling with them. In terms of bye weeks, Ray Rice is still on his permanent bye. Eric Decker, Adrian Peterson, and Ryan Tannehill all have byes this week. Peterson's the one you're really losing a lot of productivity on. Nothing really going on the bench there. Maybe Golden Tate. But that's pretty much it. LaShawn McCoy's out until further notice. So unless you want to throw Tate in there to try to generate some offense, I think this lineup's good as is. In terms of projections, NFL.com has PY can't handle me losing by 9 points. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to predict PY to pick up their first win of the season, upsetting Pocket Rocket and dropping it down to 3-2. We will see how these predictions go. As always, guys, best of luck this week. Hopefully nothing crazy happens. Hopefully no injuries. Hopefully you guys have been being safe this season and there's no injuries to yourselves. On that note, guys, I hope you liked the noodle intro thing. I'm going to keep the song the same. I'm going to do something with the logos. If I get some more time and I'm not feeling like I'm getting sick, like it kind of happened near the end of the week here, I'll spend some more time working on it and try to tweak it and fine-tune it. But I hope you guys like what I did with it. And one last time, in honor of the league's and I hate to say this, I'm very reluctant to say this, but in honor of the defending champion and quote-unquote this league's savior who stopped the undefeated streak, one more moment of tribute. Till next week, guys.
Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier!
He get it! He got it! Touchdown! 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 He did it! He did it!